Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following.
5 people were taken into custody following a high-risk situation in the Blood Reserve just outside of Standoff, Alberta. We have an exclusive interview with UCP leadership hopeful Brian Jean, who explains how he will help farmers in Alberta should he become premier. We also hear from political reporter Brian Lilly, who explains why some people are upset over Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's family holiday in Costa Rica.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. 5 people were arrested following a firearms complaint in the old agency area on the Blood Tribe just outside of Standoff. Police were called to a residence where they also dealt with someone who barricaded themselves inside of a home. Police had a search warrant at the time. Blood Tribe Police and the RCMP say the investigation is ongoing, so no names or further details of the incident will be released. Old Agency Road has since reopened, but police say they're still in the area collecting evidence. Alberta RCMP say the search for 2 suspects ended with a police shooting that left 1 person dead and a second person in critical condition. Mounties say it happened Monday morning while they were looking for the suspects on the Saddle Lake Cree Nation. They say there was a confrontation between the suspects and police. The shooting occurred in the nearby Smoky Lake area. The Alberta Serious Incident Response Team is investigating. No officers were injured during the incident. We recently brought you the story of a missing Medicine Hat man whose body had been found in Lynx Creek in the Crow's Nest Pass following a 4-day search. The man was an avid angler, and as BCN's Jeanette Rocher reports, Rajesh John had been making his mark in the sport through his very own YouTube channel, and he had his share of fans.
There you go.
Most fish.
Most fish, not the size.
Not the size.
A passion for fishing, a passion for vlogging. Put them together, you have Vlogger John. His friends knew him simply as John, the smiley, friendly fisherman who in the past 5 years had really developed his skills in angling
Like he was a sponge for knowledge.
and grew his following to over 4,500 subscribers on his YouTube channel.
He's the funniest guy. He's so spontaneous.
Just the things he would say would just make you just die. Like it was just hilarious, some of the stuff that he would just come up with.
Rajesh John, which was his real name, had worked his way up from walleye and pike and had only recently set his sights on targeting bull trout, an elusive fish that you have to travel into the mountains and backwoods for if you want the giant ones.
And that's exactly what he was doing these last, half dozen trips. He was obsessed with getting into the backcountry, into these rare, uncharted spots where he could have chance at fishing for fish that had never been caught before.
But it all came to an end on August 3rd when a trip to the Crow's Nest Pass cost him his life. The Medicine Hat husband and father told his family he was heading towards the mountains via Lethbridge on a vlogging fishing expedition. He was expected home late the next evening on August 4th, but when he didn't show, he was reported missing.
Started searching. There was quite a few of us who were very familiar with the area and very good outdoorsmen. I mean, there was not a sign of him.
Police believed Rajesh to be in the Grassy Lake area because it was the last place his cell phone pinged. But his fishing buddies had a hunch they knew where he was, and a manhunt for him began near Lynx Creek in the Crow's Nest Pass.
I mean, we had a pretty good idea of what river he was going, and there isn't many spots for the parking to be. And he wasn't much of a hiker. So, I mean, we knew he was going to be close to his vehicle.
And it turned out his friends were right. He was found underwater at the bottom of a waterfall not far from where he'd left his car. According to Adam Turnbull, a fellow fisherman and vlogger, Rajesh always wore his GoPro while fishing, and that day was no exception.
There was no foul play. There was no wild animal involved. So he unfortunately hit a snag and lost his footing and fell in.
Apparently, there was a backpack that was someone had lost in the water from somebody else a previous day at some time, and he had hooked it with his fishing rod. And when he bent down to retrieve it is when he fell in.
Turnbull says, if anything, this has stressed the importance of using a buddy system when going out into the wilderness.
And it's just a hard lesson. I mean, there needs to be a buddy system because you never know what's going to happen.
If you are planning on doing stuff like that, I mean, you need to let people know whereabouts you're going. That was a big mistake on his part.
Discuss. Hey, I'm catching a fish now.
His friends say he died doing exactly what he loved to do.
He was there to catch some bull trout, and as far as we know, he caught 2.
For Bridge City News, I'm Jeanette Roche.
Rajesh John's friends have set up a GoFundMe campaign to help get his body back to India, where he will be buried. There's also a silent auction for donations that will run this weekend. The issue of homeless in our city setting up tent encampments has continued to be a hot-button topic. On Tuesday, Lethbridge City Council voted in favor of city administration to gather information to see if building a temporary sober shelter at the Civic Curling Centre would be a viable option. Video journalist Micah Quinn has the details.
We know that there are 40 to 60 people who would use a sober shelter.
That may not seem like a big number to some, but that's currently what Lethbridge Councillor and Deputy Mayor Jen Schmidt-Rempel says is a number that would be viable if the temporary sober shelter is built. The motion at Council passed 6-2 for City Administration to apply for approval at the Civic Curling Centre for the shelter to be built. According to Schmidt-Rempel, there's no perfect solution for the tent encampments in our city, but the implementation of a temporary sober shelter is a logical next step.
It is part of the continuum of housing. It does help people who are living in the encampment, who are looking for that kind of treatment, move out of the encampment and move into a sober shelter space.
Councillor Ryan Parker voted against the motion, saying he believes our city's most vulnerable need access to appropriate shelter, but shouldn't be able to set up a tent anywhere they choose within the city.
That's why we have a shelter. We do have adequate rooms right now, adequate space. So I think it's incumbent upon us as a corporation, as well as the Lethbridge Police Service, to enforce the laws that are in place and to clean up the site.
The Director of Community Services with the City of Lethbridge, Mike Fox, says the decision to bring in a temporary sober shelter has been contemplated for a few years now, but it could take until November to get the full results back to Council.
There are some factors that we aren't aware of yet. We have to look at the costs to renovate and make the space usable. So we do have to look at that, and then also further on the capital funding is the operating funding from the province.
A homeless man named Arvin Paul Whitecow made his way into City Hall during a break in Council and had a strong message for city officials.
November, we're working on it. It should come into effect in November. Well, guess what? Between now and November, guess what? We got people out there hotter than hell. Provincial government doesn't help me. Federal government doesn't help me. City of Lethbridge doesn't help me except for the shelter.
City administration will report back to Council sometime in November with the full details on whether a temporary sober shelter is viable to be built at the Civic Curling Centre. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
Lethbridge College has a new president and CEO. He is Dr. Brad Donaldson. Dr. Donaldson takes over from Dr. Paula Burns, who resigned from the position earlier this year and moved to British Columbia. Donaldson has almost 20 years of experience with post-secondary institutions and says he's most looking forward to helping the college grow.
People I've met have been fantastic. I know the reputation of many that are there. It's just that opportunity to power innovation, to power growth in the organization, to meet our purpose, but also, as I mentioned before, to help all the people we engage with to be able to aspire to what they want to accomplish. That's very invigorating and exciting for me to see people succeed.
Donaldson will begin his new role on September the 6th and will serve as the 9th president in the college's history. Following a city stop order placed against the Last Chance Cat Ranch earlier this year, the shelter has been told that they must vacate their current location or be shut down permanently. Now the group says they're faced with another problem and is finding a new appropriate location. Angela Stewart has that story.
It's not as easy as just finding a place and moving.
For the last 14 years, the Last Chance Cat Ranch has been operating out of this home in South Lethbridge, taking in homeless and abandoned cats until they're able to be fostered out to new owners. But following a previous stop order placed on the non-for-profit and a failed appeal, the ranch must now find a new location or shut down permanently.
We have to be out towards the end of February, but if we don't find a facility soon, we will be out and closed by the end of the year.
Nancy Giles, a volunteer for the last 2 years, says as of late, new locations they have inquired about have fallen through, making their search for a new ranch harder.
We've been looking and looking since we were told we had to move, but every place that we look at has a policy of no animals.
Running solely off donations from the community, Giles says trying to raise money for basic needs for the cats is also a struggle.
We're trying to raise money for a new facility at the same time as we are trying to raise money for our food and vet bills and just our basic needs that we have here. We have several cats here that this is the only place they've ever known.
The ranch currently houses about 50 cats, and Giles says the thought of having to potentially shut down and let go of the animals is devastating.
It is just already tearing us apart mentally and emotionally of what is going to become of them. We're all just really getting drained.
With only about 6 months until the shelter has to potentially close its doors for good, it's now a plea for help.
If somebody out there has a piece of property that they think would suit our needs, just go on our website or get in touch with us on our page.
For Bridge City News, I'm Angela Stewart.
Hopefully they find the perfect home very soon. Well, the dog days of summer are here, with the heat warning continuing in our city. Jeanette Rocher is in now with an early peek at the forecast. Jeanette, those hot temperatures should be remaining with us for quite some time.
Yeah, they sure should be, Hal. And you know, we thought we'd experience the heat already, but it's about to get even hotter. We're going to be seeing temperatures soar into the mid-30s later on this week. Lots of sunshine, lots of heat in store for us. We did reach a high of 31 degrees. Overnight low tonight, only 14 degrees. So we're still staying in those double-digit teen temperatures overnight, clear skies. Into tomorrow, we should see a little bit of cloudy conditions, high of 28. I'll have the rest of the 7-day forecast coming up for you later on in the show.
Great. Thanks so much, Jeanette. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is in Costa Rica enjoying a holiday with his family. Now, there was some controversy when our PM stepped off the plane and he was seen not wearing a mask. Political reporter Brian Lilly says this is a major no-no since the Trudeau Liberals say you must wear a mask at all times at an airport. Mr. Lilly says when it comes to Trudeau, the rules are for thee, but not for me.
At Pearson, and I did this recently, you're getting on a plane and you've got to go outside and walk up an old-fashioned gangplank. You can't take off your mask. You've got to wear it inside the airport. You've got to wear it on the plane. And when you walk outside to go from one to the other, you've got to be wearing your mask. So, and if you don't, you can be subject to a $5,000 fine in Canada. So if Justin Trudeau thinks this is so important for our public health and safety that we should be subject to these rules and a $5,000 fine, why isn't he doing it in Costa Rica? Is it that the science is different or that he doesn't believe what he's putting out there? I think it's that he doesn't believe it and he doesn't think rules apply to him.
Make sure you catch the interview with the always colorful Brian Lilly and BCN's Jeanette Rocher coming up later in our newscast. The Alberta NDP is calling on the province's Auditor General to investigate bonuses paid to the Chief Medical Officer of Health and other managers for work related to the COVID-19 pandemic. Dr. Deena Hinshaw received a record-setting bonus payment of $228,000 last year. Now, that was in addition to her salary of more than $591,000. Finance critic and Lethbridge West MLA Shannon Phillips requested a performance audit of the bonus payment. Phillips also requested a performance audit of former Finance Minister Travis Taves, who denied he authorized the payments in a tweet last week. A spokesperson for Alberta's Ministry of Health said the payouts were determined using a formula for managers based on additional hours worked. UCP leadership hopeful Brian Jean was in Lethbridge recently. He visited with a number of patrons at the Lethbridge Senior Centre. Seniors who shared a lot of their concerns with him, but their biggest concern most of all was
inflation. They talked about prices going up, whether it's groceries, whether it's appliances, whether it's fixtures. And that's why I proposed a royalty-free gasoline and diesel program. You know what? We own the oil and diesel here in Alberta. Why are we paying royalties on it to our own government so they can go spend it? So I'm proposing that we would do royalty-free oil and gasoline for all of the oil, for all the gasoline and diesel that we consume here in Alberta.
Catch the exclusive interview with UCP leadership candidate Brian Jean and myself coming up after Business News. The BC Wildfire Service says it is looking pretty good around the southern Okanagan, where a number of people were evacuated last week as a wildfire approached near the community of Olalla. Fire Information Officer Brian Zandberg says the southeastern flank of the 60 square kilometer wildfire is not quite contained, but crews are getting there. More than 500 homes were ordered evacuated since the wildfire was first reported on July the 29th. Zander said crews were making good progress in part because of light winds. A Smoky Skies bulletin was posted because of a wildfire burning south of Penticton. Environment Canada says the advisory remains up for the next few days for areas including Penticton, Summerland, Caramios, and Osoyoos. The weather alert is in addition to heat warnings for the inland Central Coast and the Fraser Canyon. Environment Canada says the hot stretch in those regions is expected to last through Wednesday. A woman has been charged with abducting her 2-year-old son in Regina following an Amber Alert that ended on Sunday with the mom and the boy being found safe. The 36-year-old woman is charged with kidnapping and failing to comply with a release order. Police responded to a call early Sunday about the missing child and issued the Amber Alert later in the day. The pair were found about 2 hours later at a home in the city's northeast where the woman was arrested. Police in Saskatoon say a woman who is believed to be missing is now facing charges in Canada and the United States relating to using false identification and parental abduction. Dawn Walker was reported missing along with her 7-year-old son before they were found safe in Oregon last week. Walker faces various charges in the United States.
The first one is the felony offense for a person during and in relation to any felony violation enumerated in subsection C, to wit, false statements in the use of a passport to knowingly possess or use without lawful authority a means of identification of another person. The second U.S. charge provides that it's a misdemeanor offense for a person to possess an identification document which is stolen or produced without lawful authority, knowing that such document was stolen or produced without such authority. Our investigators have been advised by the U.S. authorities that they are confident that Dawn Walker will be further detained in the United States for the short term.
Well, it was another hot one across much of southwestern Alberta, and those sizzling hot days should remain for the rest of the week. A full look at the weather picture is on deck. Lethbridge had another heat warning today from Environment Canada, and the smoking hot temperatures will continue. Jeanette Rocher is in now with a complete look at our weather forecast. Jeanette, it is so important to stay hydrated this time of year, to seek shelter in an air-conditioned mall or movie theater so we don't overheat, isn't it?
Oh, truer words were never spoken, Hal. Great advice. Might not be a bad idea at all to stay in the air conditioning. Into tomorrow, we're looking at a high of 28 degrees, so that's a little bit lower than what we are about to experience as we are still under that heat warning. A little bit of cloud coverage tomorrow on Wednesday there as well. Then, you know what, it's just going to jump right up. That mercury is just going to keep on climbing up to 34 degrees for Thursday, 33 for Friday, under sunny skies. We could get a bit of showers by Saturday, high of 30 degrees, but back up to 31 and sunshine on Sunday, high of 29 on a Monday. So summer is not departing us anytime soon, according to these temperatures. Average high for this time of year, 26, average low 11. 37 was our high temperature back in 2000. That was on this day in 2000. That was the hottest on record. So then a year later, we're looking at 2001, only 3 degrees. 6:13 is when the sun rose this morning. Our sun set this evening, 9:01 p.m. So days are quickly getting shorter, and I'm feeling it for sure. On the west coast, the highs for tomorrow, 22 in Victoria, looking at showers there, a bit of rainfall as well in Vancouver, 24 the high, up to 30 degrees in Edmonton under sunny skies. Calgary, 29, going to also be a fairly cloudy day tomorrow, but Calgary also has been under that heat warning, so maybe the cloud's not such a bad thing. Into the rest of the prairies, looking at highs of 26, 28 in Regina, 26 that was in Saskatoon. Sunny skies all over Saskatchewan tomorrow. 24 the high in Winnipeg with partly cloudy skies. Winnipeg seeing some wind gusts there tomorrow, as well as we look to the central part of the country. 28 the high in Toronto under beautiful sunny skies. 26 the high in Ottawa, partly cloudy skies there, and a high of 25 expected tomorrow in Montreal. A little bit cooler than what they've actually been experiencing, so that's a little bit more average temperature for this time of year. 23 the high in Fredericton tomorrow with mainly cloudy skies, mainly sunny skies in the morning with a little bit of cloud coverage by later on in the day. In Halifax, 25 the high there as well. 21 in Charlottetown with showers, and only 15 a high for St. John's tomorrow with some scattered showers. So there you have it. That is your forecast.
3 years after new rules came into effect, the regulator overseeing airlines in Canada has not issued any fines related to passenger compensation for cancelled or delayed flights. Air passenger rights advocates say that reveals a reluctance by the Canadian Transportation Agency to fight on behalf of consumers. The lack of fines comes despite a flood of complaints made by travelers, both formally and through social media, who say their claims for compensation were rejected by airlines. The charter says airlines must pay up to $1,000 for cancellations or delays that stem from reasons within the carrier's control. But carriers, including Air Canada and WestJet, have denied payments on the basis of crew shortages, saying it created a safety issue, so no compensation would be forthcoming. Suncor Energy says its Commerce City refinery in Colorado is back up and running following an equipment malfunction. Company officials say the malfunction caused the safety system within one of the units at the refinery to activate. Suncor sent out an alert on Monday warning residents in the area that the temporary shutdown could result in additional flames and smoke from the refinery flares. The company then later said in the day that there were no impacts to the community and the refinery's operations were back to normal. Imperial Oil is still investigating the cause and impact of a pipeline spill in the Northwest Territories. The Calgary-based energy company reported on July 27th that it discovered around 55,000 liters of produced water had spilled before it shut down the pipeline in Norman Wells. Produced water is treated water that is pumped back to the surface during oil recovery and reused in operations. Transport Canada says the byproducts of oil and gas extraction are generally high in saline and can be contaminated with other substances. Imperial is now trying to determine if the produced water entered the Mackenzie River. Now, here's a look at today's markets.
The TSX was down 90 points on the day to finish at 19,578. The Dow was down 58 points to 32,774. The S&P 500 was down 17 points to 4122, and the Nasdaq was down 150 on the day to 12,493. West Texas Intermediate Oil was down 27 cents to $90.49 U.S. per barrel. Natural gas was up 26 cents to $7.85 U.S. Gold was down 18 cents to $17.94.11 U.S. an ounce, and silver was even on the day at $20.53 U.S. an ounce. Feed wheat is at $10.61 per bushel, barley's at $7.82, canola's at $18.65, and corn is at $10.67 per bushel. Live cattle were down 38 cents to $137.98. Feeder cattle were down $2.48 to $178.80, and lean hogs were up 40 cents to $122.20. The Canadian dollar was down slightly over the past 24 hours to 77.56 U.S.
Recapping one of our top stories, 5 people were arrested following a firearms complaint in the old agency area on the Blood Tribe, located just outside of Standoff, Alberta. Police were called to a residence where they also dealt with someone who barricaded themselves inside of a home. Police had a search warrant at the time. Blood Tribe Police and the RCMP say the investigation is ongoing, so no names or further details of the incident will be released. Coming up, an exclusive one-on-one interview with UCP leadership hopeful Brian Jean, who discusses his platform and how he plans on sticking up for farmers against the Trudeau Liberals should he become Alberta Premier. That in-depth interview is on deck. And hey, if you see news happening in your community, make sure you send us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. We would love to hear from you. The United Conservative Party will be choosing its new leader on October the 6th. Now, one of the leading candidates to succeed Jason Kenney as Premier is Fort McMurray-Lac-La-Biche MLA and former Wildrose leader, Brian Jean. Brian, welcome back to Bridge City News.
Thanks very much. A pleasure to be here.
Now, the last time we chatted during the first UCP leadership contest, I asked you if you're going to take your ball and go home if you didn't win the leadership. So let me ask you again this time, Brian. Will you quit provincial politics if you don't win this time around?
Well, are you asking me if I have to stay forever in politics, or are you saying to me that if 3 of my family members die and I'm the executor and I have to go back to take care of 3 local businesses that employ 25 families, should I go back or should I let them close down and not worry about my parents and my family? And I'm just saying to you, there's other things besides politics in my life. And I went back in a situation, I had 3 close family members die within a space of a year of me leaving politics. I had my wife medevac to Edmonton and almost lost her and our child. Listen, folks, things happen that are more important than politics. For instance, family. We had a lot of health things going on. It depends on the circumstances. It depends if my boss passes me in the hallway every day for 4 months and doesn't say, "Hey, Brian, how's it going?" If he doesn't talk to me or she doesn't talk to me for 4 months, you know what? I might take my ball and go home. It all depends who the leader is and how the leader treats the other people that were in the leadership contest.
So you'd be willing to stay on as MLA and support the new leader then?
Absolutely. I absolutely will, especially if it's me. That would be awesome, because I think with my 10 years of federal politics, my 10 years as a litigator, even constitutional law, and my 3 years as an MLA and leader of the opposition, I know how to unite people. Remember, during that period of time that I was the leader of the Wild Rose, I had a couple of wild MLAs. I never had to kick anybody out of my caucus, and nobody quit my caucus. I had to suspend somebody just for 30 days, but that was a different issue. That was, to be honest, Eric Hildebrand, who's a well-known independent thinker, and another person in my caucus for that period of time was Drew Barnes. These people were empowered by me. They were united by me, and you know, I can do it again. I took the Wild Rose from 2 MLAs and took it up to 20, and then we stayed together, and we're the official opposition. When the other parties were disintegrating around us, we stayed there, and we were solid, and we stood up for Albertans and fought the carbon tax, fought Bill 6, made sure that we stood against Notley and Trudeau, and I think we were a very effective opposition. And now I've got my personal affairs in order. I am a business person for 30 years, and I have several businesses still up in northern Alberta, but I'm trying to deal with that. I have good people running them right now, and I hope that they can stay and be as profitable as they could be. But the truth is that I'm focusing everything I possibly can on politics, because nothing is more important than Alberta politics today. We've got what's happening with Justin Trudeau and our attack on our autonomy here in Alberta, and the attack on our very way of life. And I think we have to stand up against it. That's why I'm coming back to politics, so I can be that voice that we thought we heard, but then there was no action. I'm going to take action. On day number 1, I'm going to serve notice on the other premiers and the Prime Minister, Section 46 legal notice that we want to go to constitutional negotiations. And according to the reference case on paragraph 69, we get the opportunity to do so, and the Supreme Court of Canada will enforce that for us. So that's what we need to do. We need to go open the Constitution, have that discussion. And you know what? Last night, we had a debate in Eastern Alberta, and it was so good to see a couple of the other candidates come on my side and say, yes, we're going to have to open up the Constitution and admit that. So, folks, that's the only way we can do things. That's the only way we can fix things, is we have to sit around the table with the other people involved, and that's the other premiers and the Prime Minister, and try to fix it, because it's not working right now. Canada's broken, but I think we can fix it. I think we can.
Now, many of us here in Alberta, Brian, are quite concerned over the doctor shortage here in our province. What's your plan for addressing the issue should you become Premier?
Well, immediately allow the 700 nurse practitioners to start doing what they were trained to do, and to get to the table and negotiate something immediately and get them working so they can start practicing. And they're not practicing right now. Also, to make sure we take our nursing situation and try to increase our nurses by 30 to 40% in the short term. How we do that is we, without spending any more money, right now 120% of the wage of nurses is in overtime. That's right. We spend more on overtime than we spend on wages. We could literally give our nurses a 10% raise, double the amount of nurses, and spend the same amount of money, and not burn out our nurses, not have them flee the province for other jurisdictions that give people good quality of life and protect and stand up for nurses, doctors, and teachers. These are the pinnacles of our community, and we need to stop treating them like they are the people that keep our communities together. They are the pillars of which our communities are usually founded on. And I know how important they are in rural Alberta. And I can tell you, I haven't had a doctor, my own doctor, for 30 years in Fort McMurray. So I know what it's like to have a doctor shortage, I promise you. Fort McMurray is one of those places where we have a huge number of people come from outside of our province and utilize our services, and the locals just, are left behind on a lot of cases.
A number of municipalities, including your region of Wood Buffalo, have expressed concern with the province centralizing the EMS dispatch. Now, officials say it's in an effort to save around $6 million annually. A number of mayors say it's simply not working, since it's taking ambulances far too long to arrive at residences, especially in the rural areas. Now, would you decentralize and give the power back to the municipalities?
Immediately.
And why would you do that?
because it'll save people's lives and respond quicker. You know, somebody in downtown Calgary, Edmonton, does not know where Anzac, Alberta is. They have no idea about local geography. And we need to make sure that we have people that are locally concerned about what's going on. And we have people that are be able to dispatch so they understand locations, they understand specifics, they work more quickly. There's no question that the more authority at the local level, the better the response time, the better the concern is going to be. And frankly, the better you're going to increase the resources or decrease the resources depending on what your needs are. Somebody in Calgary doesn't know what I need in Fort McMurray, nor do they know what you need in Lethbridge, and I'm going to decentralize it immediately.
Now, there was a serious push by Premier Jason Kenney to have our own provincial police force. Brian, where do you stand on the issue? I mean, many Albertans I've chatted with are quite happy with the RCMP doing the job here in Alberta.
Oh my, I'm happy with the RCMP doing the job they do for the communities they do it in, and I think they should continue to do that as long as those communities want them to do that. You see, up there's a sign that says autonomy for Albertans. I mean that. Autonomy means freedom of choice. That means that if my body, my choice, but it also means if communities want to have the freedom of choice to pick the RCMP, which is a premium police force, and I've heard as much as $250,000 an officer per year, if they want that premium police force, they should have the opportunity to have that premium police force. But if they don't, they have an opportunity to have part of a provincial police force, part of a city police force. We currently have Calgary and Edmonton and Lethbridge City Police. We have other police forces around the province, and we have Indigenous police forces, and it's growing. I think choice and opportunity will get us, frankly, better outcomes. And for the more competition we have, the more options we have, the better the prices are going to be, and frankly, the better the service is going to be. And that's why I believe in freedom of choice. That's why I believe that we should keep the RCMP, and if communities want to hire them to do the work that is so important, let's do it. But my major concern on this whole policy issue is really, truly, are we going to keep enough police officers? Because I don't think we have enough police officers on the ground right now in rural Alberta. I will tell you that I keep hearing stories about people chasing people that are stealing quads or snowmobiles or trucks or whatever out of their yard. It is not acceptable. We need a better response time on the ground by police officers. I spent 10 years in the justice system here in Alberta, practicing law, and I can tell you I have some great ideas on how to improve the justice system and not just make it available to people who have money. Because right now, that's what it appears to me, that if you have money, you can get justice, but otherwise it's very unlikely.
Now, a number of law-abiding gun owners, Brian, are angry at the Trudeau Liberals over Bill C-21. They say it's really doing nothing to address gun violence in our country and the gangs. They should be going after the gangs instead. Those, especially in rural Alberta, are very upset. How do you see it with Bill C-21?
I see it the same way. I was part of the government for Harper that voted to end the long gun registry. I was very proud to do that. I'm a sports gun owner. I also have restricted weapons permit since I was, I think, 18 or 19 years old. I'm one of the most vetted people on the entire planet, as are all Canadian gun owners, because I will tell you, they check everything to make sure that we're adequately trained and skilled and not dealing with any mental stresses around us. And I think that right now it's a total infringement. And what I would do is, I don't like stop work orders or, work to rule situations. But in this particular case, we have to slow things down as much as possible and hope that we get a conservative government in Ottawa that understands that the people that own these rifles and duck hunters and sports shooters are not the people that are causing the problems. The people causing the problems are criminals who are not going to obey the law. They are going to bring the guns in from the United States, which they are currently doing, and they are not going to obey any law in relation to what they do. And those are the people that sell the guns to the people that go out and do these horrific crimes. We have to make sure that we have better mental health in our hospitals, but also my proposal is to bring mental health training into grade 6 plus up to grade 12, a half an hour mandatory a week, so that our children can have training at the very youngest possible age on how to reach in a toolbox and pull out that tool that they need to deal with that mental stress, whether it is a death in the family or a separation or a divorce of their parents. Or people need more mental health training, and right now I believe we're in an epidemic state.
So Brian, let's also talk about your plan for tackling crime and the opioid crisis in many regions of the province. Stats Canada says Lethbridge is right up there when it comes to the Crime Severity Index. How would you, as a premier, work with the municipalities in addressing crime?
It is an ongoing problem. I was in Lethbridge last week and I saw the tent cities. I saw what was going on. I do understand the dilemma there. I'm very concerned about it. I've been searching and looking at other opportunities around the world as far as empirical data to find out how other jurisdictions deal with these situations successfully, because that's the key. Most of the time, the people that commit crimes are either young people, under the age of 18 or 19, or people that have addiction problems or mental illness, or frankly, poverty. And as a province, we have to deal with those issues firsthand. And I think the underscoring situation is frankly mental health and education in our schools, and to make sure that we bring as many people as we possibly can up as far as we can, so that they are educated, they are trained, they have the ability to get jobs and success. And in the meantime, what we have to do is have more officers on the street that have training on mental health issues. And some of the proposals that I think are in response to the provincial police force, and in particular the social workers, I think they had a proposal of 60 or 70 social workers that would be hired with the provincial police force. Well, I don't think we have to stop hiring them just because we don't do a mandatory provincial police force. I think we should look at getting that opportunity so they can work with police officers firsthand and deal with mental stresses and mental health the way it should be on the ground with the people that are committing a lot of the crimes.
Brian, a number of seniors who we've chatted with here on Bridge City News say they really feel neglected by their governments. Now, you visited a Lethbridge Senior Centre recently. What were some of the concerns that our seniors shared with you?
Inflation. They talked about prices going up, whether it's groceries, whether it's appliances, whether it's fixtures. And that's why I proposed a royalty-free gasoline and diesel program. You know what? We own the oil and diesel here in Alberta. Why are we paying royalties on it to our own government so they can go spend it? So I'm proposing that we would do royalty-free oil and gasoline for all of the oil, for all the gasoline and diesel that we consume here in Alberta. 380,000 barrels a day is what we consume here. That's a lot of gas and diesel. But remember, that money comes out of Albertans' pockets, goes into the Alberta government, and then we pay equalization payments on that money. So I'm going to stop that, first of all, which will leave more money in Alberta and more money for Albertans. But it'll also lower it. For instance, in a couple of months ago, we had prices that it would have been about 30 cents a litre to remove the fuel tax and also the royalties on Albertans' oil and diesel, which is what I promised to do if I become Premier, and I will do that. And it will mean the lowest prices of gasoline and diesel in Canada. It'll also mean that groceries will go down, appliances will go down, all those things that come in on trucks, the price will go down. All those things that come in on planes, the price will go down. All those things that come in for trains will also come down. And you know what? This will become a hub for airlines, for transportation companies, for jobs for Albertans. And that's why I think lower prices are better, because it keeps money in Albertans' jeans and makes sure we don't send it to Ottawa. The other thing is transmission and distribution charges for electricity. We're going to have surpluses over the next few years, and we need to pay down the debt for sure. But until those long-term bonds become due, we should use those surpluses and the interest derived from that to help Albertans with transmission and distribution charges. They are outrageous right now. We've overbuilt hugely in the past. Our governments have, both PC and NDP. And we have to stop that overbuild. And what we need to do is focus on making sure that Albertans can afford those huge distribution charges, those huge transmission charges, which we're paying right now, primarily in rural Alberta as a majority, but we're paying it right across the province. So what I'm saying is, let's lower costs as much as we can. The other thing we need to do is look at affordable housing. I'm a big believer in tripartite agreements and making sure that we work with groups like the Salvation Army, other groups. I'm a believer, and I know that there are a lot of really good groups out there that do a lot of work, and they do it for nothing. They do it because they love their Lord, and they want to do something, or they love their God and they want to do something. And there's amazing groups right across the world that do it. And we need to partner with those groups. We need to make sure that the government funding gets the biggest bang for the buck. And let's utilize those NGOs and the other groups that are available right now. And let's make sure we get good housing that then is going to have good management afterwards, because our seniors, frankly, for what they did for us in this country and what we have today, I think we should treat them a lot better than what we do. And we can't rely on Ottawa for it. Let's face it, Justin Trudeau is not going to help us. We need to help ourselves and our seniors right here. And I'm going to do that as Premier if I get that privilege.
So, Brian, we only have about 30 seconds left here, but I wanted to talk to you a bit about agriculture. It's a big part of our economy here in southwestern Alberta. Farmers are angry at the Trudeau Liberals for recommending they reduce fertilizer use. How would you stand up to Ottawa and support our farmers?
Well, the first thing is I wouldn't obey that particular law because it's an infringement on our jurisdiction under Section 92 of the Constitution. As I've mentioned quite a few times about the Constitution. We need to open it. People think it's a pipe dream. It is not. I litigated for 10 years. It's an agreement. We can go and we can renegotiate it. And every province in Canada right now wants to do it. They want to stop the pipeline. They've all joined the pipeline appeal. They want to open up the Constitution in relation to healthcare funding. There's a lot of provinces that are not happy with the distribution of votes across the country and corresponding politicians. There's a lot of things we need to do. And the only way we're going to fix any of this is, frankly, to open up the Constitution, give them on day number one, I've said I will give them a Section 46 notice under the Constitution, which is actually laid out in paragraph 69 of the reference case from Quebec. And let's face it, the Supreme Court of Canada thought they were laying the path for Quebec to do certain things. So they laid out the rules. And now Albertans are going to take advantage of it. We got a 62% vote on the referendum, and that referendum is the authority to open up the Constitution for negotiations. So that's what I'm going to immediately do. That's why I came up with the referendum suggestion when I was the leader of the Wild Rose. That's why I undertook a study with economists across Canada, and that's why I suggested a referendum was the only way to do that. Jason Kenney did that for us. Now let's go the next step. He didn't. I will.
UCP leadership candidate and Fort McMurray-Lac La Biche MLA Brian Jean, thanks so much for joining us today from Calgary.
My pleasure.
Well, there's been a lot happening in federal politics this past week. The Conservatives have yet to pick their leader. There's confusion surrounding an emissions policy. And the Prime Minister didn't obey his own rules and traveled without a mask. Here to discuss it all is Toronto Sun columnist Brian Lilley. Brian, thanks so much for joining us once again.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, Brian, the Prime Minister remains on vacation in Costa Rica, but a video of him emerging from a plane with no mask on has caused controversy in his absence. Why would this be?
Well, there's no requirement for him to have a mask on in Costa Rica, but this is a guy who leads the government that says it's imperative that we wear a mask at the airport for our safety and everyone else's safety, that we wear a mask on the plane, that we wear a mask. It's specifically in the regulations while disembarking. Now, of course, Trudeau supporters say, well, he's outside, it's safe not to have a mask outside. You know, at different airports in the country, including at Pearson, Canada's biggest, there are times when you have to board the plane outside. Well, at Pearson, and I did this recently, you're getting on a plane and you've got to go outside and walk up an old-fashioned game plank. You can't take off your mask. You've got to wear it inside the airport. You've got to wear it on the plane. And when you walk outside to go from one to the other, you've got to be wearing your mask. So, and if you don't, you can be subject to a $5,000 fine in Canada. So if Justin Trudeau thinks this is so important for our public health and safety that we should be subject to these rules and a $5,000 fine, why isn't he doing it in Costa Rica? Is it that the science is different or that he doesn't believe what he's putting out there? I think it's that he doesn't believe it and he doesn't think rules apply to him. Remember, he flew back from LA back in June with COVID symptoms and then within a few days turned around and went on another flight to Kigali, Rwanda. He hadn't, even gone through the isolation period, never mind the quarantine that he's supposed to go through according to his own rules, but they don't apply to him. I will say this, though. I asked the Prime Minister's office, does he use the ArriveCAN app when he comes back to Canada? They say, yes, he does. And he'll be using it when he comes back from Costa Rica.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how long those restrictions stay in place, especially like you said, so many other countries around the world have dropped them. And of course, speaking of travel, Brian, a House of Commons committee is going to investigate delays at Canadian airports. So have things improved at all recently?
Yes and no. I mean, in some ways, yes, we're seeing fewer cancellations, and the bigger problem is fewer delays, but they're still stubbornly high. And again, a good part of it comes down to government policy. I know they just want to make it about the airlines or the airports, and they're doing what they can. The government's not doing what they can to solve this problem. There was video floating around over the weekend of the customs line at Montreal's Trudeau Airport, named after our current Prime Minister's father. And that lineup was 2 hours from departing the plane to getting to see a border agent. Then there was the lineup for your luggage. Why this bottleneck? Well, in part because of the ArriveCAN app that we just mentioned. The ArriveCAN app is, works fine for some. I have traveled with it. I have not had issues. I'm very tech savvy, though. But I know people who are tech savvy who've also had issues, including one colleague traveling with their mother. Journalist Mercedes Stevenson was tweeting about this. She was traveling with her mother, put her mother on her ArriveCan app. Suddenly, it's telling them they have to quarantine for 14 days. Neither one had symptoms. Neither one had tested positive. It was very glitchy for them. Other people, some seniors don't have smartphones. Some can't fill it out properly. There's language barriers, especially at an airport like Pearson, which takes in a huge amount of international flights. All of this going on, and it's causing delays, and the government just says, no, it's fine. So Commons Committee will look into this, and we'll see if they can get answers out of Minister Omar Al-Gabra, because journalists haven't been able to get answers out of him.
Oh, that's crazy. Glitchy app. There you go. Well, last Friday, the Trudeau government announced that they were speeding up the time frame for banning the importation of handguns into Canada. So what reason did they give?
They say that this is about making Canadians safer. You and I know that's not the case. What they're doing is banning the importation of legal handguns, the type that someone who has a license, who's gone through a safety course, a background check, and vetted by the RCMP, the type of gun that they would buy at Bass Pro or Cabela's or your local gun store. They're not going to be stopping the importation of illegal handguns, the smuggling, because that continues apace. So this is about pure political theater and optics. The Trudeau government is, considering a fall election. I'm not saying they'll go for sure, but they want to be ready. This keeps an issue that generally gives them good headlines in the news. This is something that plays well with their main voting bases, urban voters, suburban mothers, especially in the suburban areas around Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, Halifax. This plays very well. They're just moving it up by using a special regulation, but the full regulation won't take effect until sometime in October because it has to sit before Parliament for 30 days. If this was also important to the government, they would have introduced this before May 30th when there were just 9 sitting days left of Parliament. So they need another 21 sitting days. That'll take them into October before that regulation can kick in. They claim that this wasn't done at the drop of a hat, that it wasn't a quick made up plan in the wake of the Texas school shooting. But, if they were working on it so long, they would have known that they were tabling it too late. They seem to have been surprised by this. They also called the Conservatives obstructionist for not giving universal agreement to waive the rules and the laws before Parliament.
Okay, so you see this move as one that they want an early election. So how does this gun ban, how would that play into an early election exactly?
Well, so it's a temporary ban right now. And if an election is called, then that regulation that's before Parliament and has to be there for 30 sitting days, well, that will die on the order paper because it hasn't passed. And so the Liberals will turn around and say, if you don't elect us, those awful Conservatives, well, they're going to be giving everyone a handgun. They will allow handguns to roam free on the streets. Well, no, the people doing that are the Liberals. They are not putting the same resources they are into stopping smuggling as they are picking fights with law-abiding gun owners. This program that they're still trying to invent of buying rifles, the 1,500 rifles, including the AR-15 that they've banned, they're going to spend more than $1 billion on that, Jeanette, and they're going to spend about 300 million, 312, I believe it is, over 5 years to improve the anti-smuggling programs at the border. So more than 3 times as much is being spent on people who don't break the law than is being spent on people who break the law. This is all about politics. So if that temporary regulation, that's there right now, but if the one before Parliament dies, they're going to use it and say, vote for us, or the Conservatives are going to make our streets very unsafe. Guns will be everywhere. Won't be true, but it will work with some voters.
Okay, so the Trudeau government also they have plans to reduce fertilizer emission, and they're feeling some heat over it. And Brian, your newspaper, the Toronto Sun, published a column from a Liberal MP pushing back on what he claims are truths about that policy.
Yeah, Lloyd Littlefield, who's a Liberal MP from the Guelph area. It's home to Cow College, Cow University, as we call it, the University of Guelph. They've got a big agriculture program. Once you get to Guelph and out that area, heading west and southwest, huge agricultural area for Ontario, at least. Not as big as Prairie Farms, but it is pretty big. So he represents that area, and he wrote an op-ed. Now, let me point out, the Liberal government does not come to the Toronto Sun to publish op-eds very often.
Right.
This is not. We are not their preferred publication. We're the publication they'd prefer not to deal with, but I'll give them credit, they do. So they're obviously feeling heat by putting this forward. Unfortunately, the column that the Liberal MP put forward is beating up on straw man arguments. He's saying, look, there is no ban. Stop saying there's a ban. Most people are saying there's a reduction. And there is some confusion around this. So the government says they want to reduce emissions, not reduce the use of fertilizer, but there's got to be an absolute emissions reduction of 30%. When I speak to industry groups like Fertilizer Canada, wheat growers, Ontario grain farmers, individual farmers, they say we can't reduce nitrous oxide emissions without reducing fertilizer use. We can use fertilizer more efficiently. We can change how it's used, and we're doing that all the time. But for you to tell us we've got to do it in this short time frame just won't work. Canada, by the way, is one of the countries low down on the scale compared to our peers, be it in agriculture, be it the United States, be it France, be it Ukraine, be it Russia. We use far less fertilizer per acre than these countries do. So we're already lower. But the Greeniacs, the folks with the green blinders on in the Trudeau government, their idea is reduce, whether it helps Canada, helps Canadian producers or not. So there's a lot of confusion around there, and a lot of pushback. But most farmers I talk to say, well, actually all of them, I don't know how to reduce emissions without reducing fertilizer use. They're happy to go to an intensity-based target. The government is not interested in talking to them about that.
Yeah, obviously so much confusion about this. Even I believe the Western Producer has written about the government's poor communication on this. So why are they not communicating their message, I guess, efficiently or properly? And why all the confusion over this?
Well, they seem to be talking past each other to a degree. As I said, the industry would like to go to an intensity-based target. How much fertilizer do you use per unit of crop produced, and look for ways to lower that, but not say you've got to absolutely reduce emissions, because again, there are different ways that farms can reduce their fertilizer use and still keep crop output high, but many of those are already in place, especially in major operations. So the people I'm talking to say, well, we're already doing the things the government wants us to do. It's as if they talk to us as if we don't know how to run farms, whereas bureaucrats in Ottawa do. They know how to run the farms, whether it is, I've talked to farmers in that southwestern Ontario area, talked to farmers in Saskatchewan, talked to industry groups across the country. They're all saying we're doing what we can. We're doing what the government wants. They don't want to give us credit for it. They just want to push for further reductions, and it's not feasible at the time. There is a consultation ongoing until August 31st, and so anyone that's concerned about that, find a way to participate in that. Do it respectfully. It always gets you further than being angry or yelling, but participate in it and let the government know the reality of what's going on, because most people I'm talking to are saying zero consultation from the government, and they're not listening when we do give them input.
Okay, Brian, the Conservatives have yet to pick a leader, and this happens in about a month from now in September. So Pierre Poilievre has spent the last little while holding rallies in Western Canada again, and he seems like the one to beat. But last week, Jean Charest's campaign said that they still have a path to victory. So do you think that they could win?
If they do, it's a very narrow path to victory, and that's something that they admit to. They don't foresee themselves winning on the first ballot or sweeping the country, but their view, and they put this out in a document to supporters that was leaked to me, they say that you need just 1 over 16,900 points to win. It's the point system. Each riding worth 100 points. You get points based on how well you do in each riding, and you've got to do well across the country. They think that they can take 50% of the points in Ontario, 75% of the points in Quebec, and then do 60 to 65% of the points in Atlantic Canada. Atlantic Canada is possible, but I find the 50% in Ontario and 75% in Quebec very tough. There's a good chance that Jean Charest will win in Quebec. There's a good chance he'll do well in Atlantic Canada, but taking 75% of the points in Quebec, which his own team says he needs to do, is a tough slog, especially when you look at how many memberships Pierre Poilievre sold there. And then you look at the fact that he is also popular with the existing party members who were there already. And I don't see how Jean Charest gets there. As I said, it's a narrow path, but it's one that's there. But I've had people who are not supporters of Pierre, who know the system well, who've worked for other campaigns, and say that Pierre Poilievre is going to win on the first ballot with more than 50% support in every single province. So those are a couple of bold predictions right there, that Poilievre wins every province with more than 50% on the first ballot, versus Jean Charest saying he's got a narrow path with support from BC, Ontario, Quebec, and Atlantic Canada, but not really much on the prairies.
Okay, we're almost out of time here, but one more question. Brian, have you ever gotten a check from the government that you didn't cash? Because apparently this is happening. The feds are sitting on uncashed checks. So tell us about the astonishing amount of money that Canada Revenue Agency says that they're sitting on because people are not remembering, I guess, to cash their federal checks. What's going on?
I haven't received a check from the government in a long time. When they send me money now, it's automatic deposit. But I remember back to when I was young, and you get those quarterly GST checks, I'd be running to the bank with that. So I don't get this. There's more than $1.4 billion that people have not cashed. And they've started a program to start reminding people, hey, we sent you a check, you didn't cash it. So they're sending emails. I think they're doing some regular mail delivery as well, because they want this cleared out. They've been doing this for a little while. They're about to send out another 25,000 email reminders, but they've done it in the past, and as much as 800,000 has been cashed due to those reminders, but they've still got 1.4 billion. I'll take some of that if people don't want to cash the check. Send them to me.
Yeah, I wonder if these are just getting lost in the mail. People, check your mailboxes and check your glove boxes, your console, anywhere you may have thrown it. Just double check. Thanks so much, Brian. Looks like we're out of time, but so great to have you on again.
Thank you.
Brian Lilley is a Toronto Sun columnist and our federal political correspondent. I'm Jeanette Roche on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News. Thanks for watching.